Are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is part 2 of this 2-part podcast. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil, and you are listening to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil, however you may be joining us. YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every single day. We've got recaps of every game throughout the playoffs here on the Locked On Heat YouTube page and podcast feed, so make sure you're tuning in daily and after every game. But let's get to some of these questions. If you didn't listen or see part 1, that is up in your feed and up on the YouTube page. We're gotten to whether or not this series is already over between the Heat and the Sixers. Well, let's get to some of these questions here.
Here's a quick one, though. Yeah, this is a quick one. Oh, no, sorry. But not to cut you off, but Steven Torres is asking, where's the podcast? Steven, podcast is everywhere. That's where we started off before we started, launching this YouTube empire of ours. You can find it anywhere. Google Play, anywhere you can get podcasts.
It's called Locked On Heat. Just search it.
That's right. Yeah.
Wherever you get podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, Overcast, Google Play. I'm trying to think. Is this not good radio anymore?
Yeah.
All right. Michael writes in, I noticed a lot of stagnation when Miami rolled out lineups that featured Oladipos, Butler, and Tyler Herro. Do you think that there is a way Spo can make such lineups work? It's a really good question. And this is the reason why Oladipos did not play with Jimmy Butler over that kind of final stretch of the season, right? But I think they stumbled onto something with PJ Tucker at the 5, right? Because now you've got a three-point shooter. As great as Bam Adebayo is, one thing he is not is a floor spacer. PJ Tucker is a floor spacer. You have to respect him specifically from the corners, but he's been making those straightaway threes this season for Miami as well. He's a guy that is happy to hang out on the perimeter and is effective just being there, where Bam needs the ball, right? He needs to operate in the mid-post. He needs to be there. And so I think that's the answer. If you're going to play those 3 guys, specifically if you're going to play Oladipos with Jimmy, then you've got to probably play that in a lineup that features PJ Tucker at the 5 and no Bam. I think the hard and fast rule for this Heat team, at least right now, until Bam develops a 3-point shot, is that you can only play 2 of Bam, Oladipos, and Jimmy Butler, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there were multiple times there where even when Jimmy was trying to attack the paint, and it's part of the unpredictable nature of Jimmy's game and the fact that when he has the ball in his hands, you're not ever quite sure exactly what he's going to do because he's so good in that mid-range game. He's so good at getting to the basket, but he's been more willing to shoot the 3. And so you're kind of left as a team just sort of ball watching there. And there were times where he gets the ball out in the perimeter and he's holding the ball for a second or two. And then all of a sudden guys start cutting. And at the same time as they're cutting, Jimmy starts driving to the hoop. And next thing you know, you've got this clog down there leading to some of that stagnation I think you're talking about. And it's unfortunate because he needs to be a little bit more decisive. And I think partly that was due to the injury that we saw. I'd like for him to be a little bit more just freewheeling and again, more confident in letting that shot go, especially from the perimeter, because it was such a valuable weapon. Yeah. Like he returned to he took a corner 3 at some point, I think as the shot clock was expiring. Don't quote me on this exactly, but I recall that he took a three-pointer and he wound up using that wonky footing that he had earlier in the regular season, not the smooth shooting mechanism that we've seen from him, mechanics that we've seen over the Atlanta Hawks series. So I don't want that to be the case. I want him to be a much more effective 3-point shooter moving forward.
This next question comes from, I don't know, Blaze Kaiser 9000. I gave it my best shot.
Blaze Kaiser, yeah.
I guess the first 8,999 Blaze Kaisers were taken. Who would be tougher for the Heat, the Bucks or the Celtics? I like this question, Blaze Kaiser.
I think
Bucks
it's
or
pretty
Celtics? Clear. Is it pretty clear?
Isn't it?
Who do you think?
To me, I think the Bucks represent the tougher matchup. I think the Celtics are deeper, but I think Miami has the recipe to answer whatever challenges the Celtics can face, then throw at them. Whereas there's still that X factor. Similarly as to what we're talking about in context of this series with Joel Embiid, there's the Giannis Antetokounmpo factor. And we've seen such an improvement from him over the recent years. While Miami might do a better job of defending him than any other team in the NBA, I still worry about whether or not he might just go off. And we've seen him create enough chaos, initiate offense for everybody else, collapse defenses, etc., to the point where a Bobby Portis could get going, or a Pat Connaughton, or anybody. I just, and especially if Chris Middleton returns to full strength. Now, that's my caveat. There is, if he's back and he's healthy, certainly I think the Bucks are much more dangerous. If he's not, maybe I'd give the edge to the Celtics.
So you just sort of talked yourself into the Celtics there.
I get it if Middleton's out, but
Right.
Assuming that Middleton's going to be back, and I think he is, whatever series, if Miami advances and if Milwaukee advances, I think Middleton will be back for that series, right?
So we've got, possibly, yeah. We've got game 2 of Bucks Celtics tonight. I'll be interested to see what the Celtics do with Milwaukee's physicality, because that's the reason Milwaukee won game 1, is they just out-physicaled the Boston Celtics.
Yep.
And if the Heat are a physical team, right?
Yep.
And I could see that maybe playing against Boston. I don't know who I would pick, Heat Celtics, Heat Bucks. I really don't know. We can make the argument that both teams are better than Miami, right? Because of how high Jason Tatum's ceiling is. But I already joked about this once, but my biggest takeaway from game 1 of Bucks Celtics was that the Brooklyn Nets are really bad, and
that's fair.
So I am interested to see what the Celtics look like against a really good team in the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks are a problem for Miami, especially if Chris Middleton is there. If Chris Middleton is not available, it really evens the playing field, I think, for the Heat, because there's just so many waves that they could go through. Whereas Milwaukee's it's unfair to say they're Giannis and everybody else, because Drew Holiday has been really great for them. Grayson Allen's having a heck of a playoff run for them. But it becomes a little bit more simple and easier to defend. And when you look at the first round sweep last year, it was sort of toggling between those Middleton and Giannis 2-man actions that really did Miami in over the course of 4 games. And if you take one of those players out of that situation, Drew Holiday, you're just not really worried about him. You can go under on those screens. You can, and obviously you're going to go under on those Giannis screens. So you're not really forced to deal with stuff. You can kind of put that wall back in front of both of those guys and deal with whatever comes. With Middleton, all of that goes out the window, right? And so I would say it depends. I'll tell you this. I'd probably say tougher for the Bucks, because I do expect Middleton to be back by then. It's going to be tough either way, man. Those are 2 really good teams. But like I said, I'm interested to see how the rest of the series goes, and kind of get a better feel for what the Celtics are. Let's get to this next one. Do you think that Strus actually hits his shots next game? Yes.
I do.
Okay, good. Next question. Next question, just a statement. Macadamia cookies deserve some love. They're underappreciated, much like this Heat team with the media. Are the Miami Heat the macadamia nut cookie of the NBA, David?
That's tomorrow's episode. I don't know. I've never had a macadamia nut cookie, so I can't tell you.
I don't know why I've put you in charge of choosing the cookies. Every time we talk cookies, I've never had that one.
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, you say I've picked Milano like dozens of times. I've never even had a Milano cookie either. I don't know.
Our bet still stands that if the Heat win the championship, you are eating an entire box of Thin Mints, right?
I will take them with me to Biscayne, and I will not harass any Girl Scouts in order to get the box of Thin Mint cookies. But
I want you eating them on the logo at center court at FTX Arena. That's what I want. We will organize that.
Done.
We'll make it happen. Okay.
Done.
Done.
Yeah,
The bet gets better. Bet gets better. Steven Torres writes in, is Dwayne Dedman going to keep playing, or are they going small ball from here on out? Well, if Dedman picks up, 3 fouls in 38 seconds again?
And not great, yeah.
Yeah, he's probably not playing a lot. I don't expect – Dedman is a foul-prone center. He's not that foul-prone, so I do expect us to see a little bit of Dwayne Dedman, especially because you're not really worried about Philadelphia centers, so you could still put Dedman out there, and he could probably win that matchup, and you don't have to really resort to small ball. But again,
I think
like,
the
if
secondary
Philly
question
to go small –
yeah. The secondary question to me is can't Markieff Morris make an appearance? Like, he's been out of the rotation for so long right now, but I feel like, especially in the zone, given that mid-range shot and the fact that he does stretch the floor better than any other center option. Like, I know Dedman has the 3-point shot in his repertoire, but I wouldn't call it a consistent weapon. Like, doesn't he get some playing time? Like, at the smallish ball center, like a guy who can stretch the floor and has a jumper in his repertoire, why not put him out there? I just I could see him as a legitimate weapon, and I'm just not sure why he's not getting the burn at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of the Markieff Morris thing is really interesting. I wonder if it's just a matter of he hasn't played with this group for so long. Unlike Victor Oladipo, he doesn't really have that high ceiling. He really is a guy who's basically a role player, and role players need to know what they're doing out there on the court. And that's not anything against Markieff. He was just, knocked out for months of the season.
That's what
And,
Spo alludes to. But we've seen
yeah.
Spo kind of flip the script on like guys like Kelly Olynyk. And then all of a sudden Olynyk gets minutes after like days or weeks and games of not playing. And he's like, oh, Kelly's really been putting in the work behind the scenes. It's like, is Markieff not putting in the work behind the scenes? Like there's this weird expectation as part of Heat culture is that everybody has to continue to work hard, whether you're getting playing time or not. And Keefe, like, let's be honest, like he's at a point in his career where he wants to be on the floor because this might be his last NBA contract. Like he's on that level right now where if he doesn't show something this season, who's going to call him the next? I don't know that there's a lot of suitors for that. And so he probably grumbled, maybe somewhat privately, maybe somewhat publicly for a little bit more playing time. And that kind of goes against the grain in terms of what the Miami Heat are looking to do. So I don't know. I could see some off the court things being a little bit of a problem there for Eric Spoelstra, but we'll see. I mean, I think
seems like the Lakers would bring him back. That's for sure. I don't know. You're right. Like with Spo, nothing's off the table. It really isn't. It's not. I mean, it is a talking point for him very much, but it's also true. This next question comes from Jay. If Joel Embiid is able to come back, how big of an impact will it have on Bam's game? What do you think?
Sorry. I changed the question there a little bit because I meant to pin this one, but what's the question there? If Embiid is able to come back, how big of an impact will it have on Bam's game? Huge, significant. Like, I mean, Bam cannot roam on defense as much as he normally does. You can't switch as much because you just cannot allow Embiid to get that kind of space. We've seen it before. If you're switching and all of a sudden Embiid takes two of those long ass steps of him, he can get to the hoop and finish with a dunk, draw the foul if you're late and recovering and rotating. You have to stay with him. So that changes how Miami plays defense. That's a series where, I mean, in that case, I would say a guy like Deadman probably gets more playing time because, again, that's another body to just pick up fouls, which you're probably going to do regardless against Embiid. So, I think that's a big part of it.
I think Bam becomes more of a playmaker, right? Because you're going to have Embiid having to close. The one thing about Bam is he's going to draw that floater, that like little foul line extended floater that he's got, that little push shot is such a weapon that defenses do respect. That Embiid's going to play up on that, even though Philly typically plays drop. I would imagine that Embiid would come out a couple of feet to play up on that, and then all of a sudden you've got those backdoor cuts that are available. Whether Max Strus has become a really good cutter. Jimmy Butler also obviously an elite cutter. You could see these guys sort of making those backdoor moves, getting open shots behind Joel Embiid. So Bam Adebayo, it wouldn't look like it did, right? Like they wouldn't just be running high pick and roll over and over into the teeth of Philadelphia's defense because now Joel Embiid will be standing there. And whether or not he's got a right eye or not, he's still a really big body, and it's just harder to do. And so, I think you start to see a little bit more of, all right, let's feed Bam into that post, run split cuts off of it, kind of find things backdoor and all these things. And by the way, Bam's really, really good at that stuff. So I don't think it would make Bam less effective. It would just make him different kind of effective. Next question comes from Josh. What will Victor's minutes look like when Kyle is back? I don't know that Lowry's inclusion affects Victor Oladipo's minutes in this series.
Yeah,
I think it affects Gabe Vincent's minutes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I mean, Gabe as a secondary initiator off the bench, for that, you honestly have Oladipo. You've already got Jimmy Butler handling the ball. You've got Tyler handling the ball a significant amount of time. Like the need for Gabe Vincent isn't as prescient if you've got Lowry playing 30 minutes a game. So I think you're absolutely right. I think it's not going to impact Oladipo as much because he's still a longer wing defender who can go out there and challenge a Harden. And I think that's your biggest threat. Like, I mean, he can challenge. He can stay with a Maxey. He can stay with a Harden. Vincent a little undersized when it comes to that Harden matchup in particular. So I think that's where his minutes get taken out of the rotation a little bit.
It goes back to a little bit about what we were talking about in the Duncan Robinson stuff, where right now the Heat, they have the high ground in this series, right? Like their rotation works. There's no reason to take defense off of the floor at all in the case of Victor Oladipo for Duncan Robinson. And when Kyle Lowry comes back, he will be the starter again. But I doesn't feel like there's much of a rush. I was at media today after practice. It feels like every time even somebody a reporter uses the word rest in regard to Kyle Lowry, like nobody's really pushing back on that. And I'm not saying that is what is happening.
He could play. My feeling is that he could play.
He could play.
Yeah.
But it's
if
a
this
hamstring.
was Game 7 of
you
the
have
NBA
to be careful
Finals.
with it.
Yeah. But if this was Game 7 of the Finals, he'd be out there.
Well, let's talk about that. Justin writes in, let's say Kyle keeps having lingering issues and the Heat make it to the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Finals. Is it possible that he loses his starting spot due to consistency and recent chemistry?
No, none whatsoever. We've seen that from this team in the past. Like, guys do not lose their spots that way. It's Kyle Lowry, NBA Finals player. I mean, like, proven winner.
This is why you signed him. This is why you signed him. He's got championship experience.
You want him out there. You're not taking that chance.
The one thing that the Heat have missed in the last couple of games without Kyle Lowry is the pace, is the opportunity to get out into fast break opportunities and the hit aheads. They just don't have it without Kyle Lowry. They just don't have it at all. And so, and in that first half, we saw like I said after the game last night, it really felt like they missed Kyle Lowry more than anything in that first half. And then eventually Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo sort of figured it out. But high pick and roll isn't going to work every single game, every single series. They really do need Kyle Lowry back. More than, and that just another reason why they're being extra careful with Kyle so that he doesn't deal with these lingering injuries, to Justin's point. Brian writes in, did you see the video of Tyrese Maxey moving away from James Harden on the bench? We get into that.
No, I'm glad we brought that up because I've seen other people, I think somebody from the Philadelphia side of things maybe have explained that it turns out that Sam Cassell may have been calling Maxey over. And that's why he was like going to kind of just, talk to him a little bit, teach him up or something like that, give him some advice while he was on the sideline. I know it looked bad, and I'd love to be able to lean into that 100% and say, yeah, nobody likes James Harden. I just don't know if I necessarily buy it either. So I think, again, if that's true, it seems like, that Maxey was just moving away from not because he didn't like Harden, but because he wanted to go talk to his coach, which makes a lot more sense. I don't think I've ever seen that. Like I don't know that Harden would have gone sat next to Maxey in the first place if there was this incredible animosity between them. I just don't think that's real.
I think his beard smells.
That's
I think his beard smells, and Maxey's like, I like you a lot, dude. You're the leader on this team. You are an all-star. You are a future Hall of Famer. I just can't sit next to you right now. This is why we space the floor on opposite sides of the court when we're playing together. I think his beard smells. I think he called them thick mints and then walked away. That's what I think happened.
Okay.
Last one here. Philippe writes in, we know that some players are highly superstitious. Do you guys have any game day routines affected by superstition?
I used to. I texted you yesterday, in fact, that I had my thermostat at a certain number, and I raised it by 1 degree to 77, baby, because there will be no 76 degree level house in this.
Oh, see, I didn't catch that joke. I didn't respond to you because I was like, I don't get it.
I raised it 1 degree, so I could not have the thermostat at 76.
Understood.
While they're playing Philadelphia.
You could have went down 1 degree to 75.
Yeah,
you prefer warmer?
Hey, I don't.
Like the Spurs?
I don't prefer paying FBL. That's for sure. That's just me. Yeah. So
like
I mean, you're right.
It's like that Spurs series when they up the temperature.
I'll be honest. I did not get cramps yesterday, so I'm not a game time decision. No worries about that. Other than that, I tend to move around sometimes. Like I will be honest with you. Part of the rant that everybody seems to be enjoying was based on the fact that the emotions ratchet up just a little bit during the playoffs. So I think I start to I cannot help it. I go 82 games going, titles don't mean anything. Games don't mean anything. It's all about embracing the players, sit Jimmy Butler, etc. All the things that you joke about. And yet when the playoffs start, it's like, I can't help it. You start to feel a different level of intensity there. And just,
I'm glad you actually care whether or not they win or lose. You finally admitted it on air. Just rest everybody for a game that will never happen.
There you go.
I used to have a ton of superstitions, not just for the Miami Heat.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But so many, so many for the Miami Dolphins. I had like 3 different footballs that I would cycle through. One would be lucky throughout the season, and then it would become unlucky, and then I would pick up a new football, and that would be the football for a couple weeks until I decided that one was unlucky. So I would do that. I would cycle through different jerseys, hats, shorts, etc., like different spots on the couch, whether or not
Yep.
I would lay down on that couch or not. There was just like a million different variables and a decision tree that I was making up in my head when I was like 9.
Yeah.
And none of it worked because the Dolphins have always been bad. So sorry about that. None of it worked. But is in terms of the Heat, no, I don't really have anything. I
Wow.
do have some superstitions now in regards to our podcast and our coverage. Like there's
Oh,
certain
really?
things that I have to do. Like I have to have my game notes ready. Like I feel like if I typically won't take notes in the first quarter because I feel like that's like jumping the gun. So like those aren't superstitions in regards to having a good or a bad podcast. It's just sort of workflow
Just
things that I've
preparation.
landed on. But yeah, I
Dur-
think I'm beyond the superstition for now.
During the Big Three era, I was like, I had like a rotation of shirts, like T-shirts that I would wear during the season. Like it would be Dwayne, Chris, and LeBron, and I had them like on a rotation. I would change them out for every game. Like one game I would watch, it would be Dwayne, next would be Chris, etc. And then I had a specific shirt that I would wear just during the NBA Finals. And unfortunately for my wife, I wouldn't wash it either. So it was just something that I was wearing that just specifically during the NBA Finals. And then I think I've told the story before, but during the Game 6 against the Spurs in 2013, I went in to the bedroom, watching it in the living room, frustrated when they were down, whatever they were down, and then I threw the shirt into the hamper. I was like, that's it. They're fucking losing. That's it. It's over. I wasn't covering the team at that point yet.
This dumb shirt.
Yeah, and I just threw the shirt away, and I was like, you know what? I can't do it. Got to ride with
Yeah.
the team for better or for worse. Went out there, not wearing the shirt. Went out there, watched the game, and of course, that's when Ray hits a shot, and I ran back into the bedroom. They're back, baby. They're back, and I grabbed the shirt, and put it back on for overtime. So that was the extent.
Wow,
of my
I'm glad they. I don't remember you telling me that. I've heard the story. I don't remember you telling me that you put the shirt back on. That's I think
Oh
a
yeah.
new detail. So
Yeah.
if they had lost in overtime, we would have had you to blame. I mean, the obvious thing at that point is leave the shirt off.
That's yeah. I suppose you're right. No. I felt it was
I
imperative.
can't believe
for
you
me
put it
to
back
win.
on. You really risked it all there.
That's the way you got to live, baby. You got to live by the. Gotta live life.
You
to
don't
the
eat
edge.
cookies, but you'll switch your shirts
Yeah.
out and stuff.
Cookies, no thanks.
I don't. You reminded me about the shirt thing. I don't have this now, even though I did have a 2012 Dwayne Wade jersey that I did wear. I had the same outfit for the 2012 finals. I have not done anything like that ever since. But basically since I started doing this. But my fiance did buy a sick new like Miami Heat sweater,
Mhm.
and she wore it for one game, and the Heat lost.
Never again.
And she
Burn
was
it.
sitting on the couch, and the Heat lost. And I didn't say anything. I just looked at the sweater, and I just took a mental note, and that was it. And the Heat lost again. She wore the sweater, and the Heat lost again. And I go, babe, I
No
know
way.
you really like the sweater.
No chance.
You can never wear it again. And that was it. And she never has worn it again during a game. She'll wear it. She'll put it on and she'll look at me and she'll say, are the Heat playing tonight? And I say no. And she'll be like, okay, I'm going to keep wearing the sweater. And that's it.
Wow.
So she's aware. She's
All
aware.
right, good. That's awesome.
She's a team player.
She's a keeper. That's why she's a keeper.
She's a keeper. We got one more.
All right.
Robert writes in, if you guys were the 76ers, what would be some ways that you could follow to beat the Heat and their tough defense? Here's an idea. Stop saying you're going to do it in post-game press conferences after you just got wiped off the floor in game 1. How about that? That's my first step. Stop saying you're going to do it.
Don't start DeAndre Jordan. I think that's a big step there. I mean, again, I don't know that there are a lot of great options there, but I don't think DJ
Charles
is one
Barkley
of them.
out of retirement.
Dr. J. Dr. J, yeah.
Dr. J.
Is that the extent of Philadelphia greats? Am I missing anybody? Paul Harrison?
I'm sure we are. Allen Iverson.
Oh, yeah. He's much more likely. That's much more current. Andre Iguodala, former All-Star.
Jimmy
right?
Butler would just get him on the switch over and over again and just destroy him, though.
Yeah. There's not a lot of options there. I think this is what we've seen. Like, I mean, the argument for a super team or a team with a lot of top-heavy talent is that, they change the outcome of a game because of their individual greatness. Miami just isn't built that way. They have players that can be individually great, but by and large, they're just a strong team with a lot of depth, with a lot of players that can go off. We saw Jimmy Butler struggle from the field. This is the same Jimmy Butler that roasted the Atlanta Hawks in the previous series. And it wasn't necessary. They were up by 20 at some point without Jimmy Butler performing at his all-star best. So that's where the strength of Miami comes from.
Is it over, David? Are you coming on board with me on the over train?
No, I still think like I'm going to stay consistent to Heat in 5 because I keep leaning towards.
Sounds like it's over.
This Heat team knows what's at stake. They don't want to let this team creep back up. We saw that they kind of let them creep up in the first half. They were down 1, and they were like, you know what? We're not going to take that. We're not going to tolerate letting them build that kind of irrational confidence that Paul Reed has, where apparently they knew they could beat this team even as they were down by double-digit points. I don't know. So they don't want to let that happen. You cannot afford to with a player like Harden, especially with a player like Embiid waiting in the wings to come back at some point. So Heat in 5, baby. Heat in 5.
All right. Well, that was a long explanation. I'm going to try this one more game. David, is it over? One more time. I'm trying one more time.
Yeah, it's done, baby. Sweep. Bring out the brooms. I don't believe that.
Sorry for the jinx to the basketball gods, but thank you all to who tuned in, especially live here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Thank you so much for the questions that you sent in. If you missed anything, it is all up on the YouTube page. It will be up on your podcast feeds shortly once we get it produced and up there. We got so many great things. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for participating. Remember to like and subscribe Locked On Heat on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Comment and leave a 5-star rating and reach us on Twitter at Locked On Heat. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On NBA podcast. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday. You can hear David on the Tuesday morning episode. I am on the Friday morning episode. That is every single week. It's free. It's available wherever you get your podcasts.